Am I co-host?
No, you're not. I should do that. Yeah. There you go. Hi, everyone. We're just going to give folks a few minute or so to come on in the webinar here. Thanks for joining us today. All right. Hi there, everyone. Welcome to Technology Tuesdays. My name is Lydia Nimke, and I'm very excited to bring you all today's presentation on Google Slides and Google Forms. This is actually the last of the Google Tools Tech Tuesdays, and I really hope this has given you all a bit of the information you need to take advantage of some of these free tools. If you happen to miss any of our previous recordings for things like getting a Google account, using Google Chrome, Gmail, and our first Google Drive session, feel free to let us know in chat and we'll be happy to get you a recording of them. They're all publicly available on the Milwaukee Public Library's YouTube page. A little bit of housekeeping. You are all muted and have your cameras turned off by default, but please don't let that stop you from asking questions about today's presentation in the Q&A box down below and engaging in the chat. With us today, we have Beth Gabriel in the background.
Hi, everybody. So glad to see you all again. Make sure to use the Q&A to have any questions that you might have for Lydia. I will read them out loud as we go through. Have a good session, everyone.
Thank you, Beth. Awesome. So with that, let's talk about some of the main concepts we'll be covering today. So we'll be talking about Google Forms for collecting information, and we'll discuss the different types of questions you can include in your form. And in demonstration, we'll show how to create a simple form and send them out to respondents. We'll also touch briefly on how to view the data you get from a form. Then we'll move on to Google Slides for presentations, which is where we'll discuss the basics of slides, including things like how to add text and pictures and how to customize slides, as well as the power of speaker notes when you're doing a presentation. There will, of course, be demonstrations in both, but if there's anything in particular you want to see beyond what I'm kind of planning to cover, please make sure to let us know in the Q&A and I'll be happy to show it off. Now, of course, before you start using forms or slides, you need to make sure you're signed in with that Google account. This is going to give you access to all of these things I'll mention today. All right. Google Forms allows you to create your own custom online forms that are fillable and send them to others. These forms can include surveys, quizzes, signups, pretty much anything where you want to gather information from a group of people. When someone completes this form, the responses can be stored in a Google Sheets spreadsheet for you to analyze the responses. We're going to access Google Forms through Google Drive today. And all you need to do is click that new button and select Google Forms from the list that appears. So if you're curious about what you can do with Google Forms more specifically, there are a lot of options, pretty much as broad or as narrow of an application as you want to have with Google Forms, you can make it so. There are a lot of personal uses as well as professional uses. So for personal, you might want to do things like send out event invitations or gather contact information. Say you lose your phone, you lose all of your contacts, you could post a form to social media perhaps and gather everyone's phone number and email address and things like that. It's also useful for things like finding the meeting times. If you have a book club that for some reason hasn't met for the past 2 years and you're really excited to start up your book club again, but things have changed drastically and you want to make sure everyone is meeting at a time that is the best for them, you could send out a form to see where people are most interested in meeting, when people are most interested in meeting, and things like that. Professional applications can be very broad as well. Smaller businesses actually can totally use Google Forms to make up their own job applications, use order forms and feedback forms, and a whole lot more. And then I didn't include it on this slide, but Google Forms has a lot of applications in education as well. Teachers can use Google Forms to create quizzes and worksheets for their students to complete, and they can be, self-scoring and provide feedback on the answers that were given as well. So because you can create and edit so many forms, you can do this either from scratch or by using a template. And we're going to go over how to create your own form from scratch and the various types of questions you can use. But your blank Google form will look basically like this. From here it's your starting point. You're going to add the name of your form, any description, and from there you start creating your questions. And this is actually the question toolbar, and that's going to pop up on every section that you're editing. And this is where you're going to add more questions, do things like import questions, add images or videos, things of that nature. So what are the different types of questions you can include? What type of question you'll use really depends on what kind of answer you're looking to get. But you can add, I think there's 10 different types of questions you can include. These are the kind of the overarching categories. So short answer or any written answer allows your recipients to type anything they want as an answer. And this is great for when you want a personal response for feedback or for maybe a written portion of an assignment, something like that. You can also use a paragraph answer, which is going to be much longer and have no character limit. Under multiple choices, there are things like checkboxes, drop-down lists, and these allow recipients to select answers from a list, which is very helpful for when you want a narrow selection of responses. So for example, if you are planning to host a holiday party, holiday type potluck, and you want to know who's bringing what, you can ask them to select a multiple choice option of if they're bringing a main course, a vegetable side dish, a starch side dish, or a dessert, and then ask them in a short answer format what they're actually bringing to make sure you have some from each category. You can also ask a linear scale type of question. So with this question, the answers are selected on that number scale, which lets recipients rate things or give feedback on how they felt about something. So I use these in the survey that comes up after Tech Tuesdays to ask things like, how comfortable are you using the technology you just learned about? Do you feel like your knowledge increased? And it's on a scale from 1 to 5. So 1 being, I don't feel like my knowledge increased at all, no increase. 5 being a lot of increase, and the 3 being right down the middle. And then we have our time and date questions. So when's your birthday? What time are you available for a meeting? Things like that. After you've created the questions and filled in the answers for your multiple choice, at least, for your form, you'll want to adjust its settings. Google Form offers a variety of settings that allow you to really customize how your recipients use and interact with your forms. Quizzes enables a whole set of features around grading and point structure and answers and things of that nature. Response settings allows you to change what happens after a person has filled out the form. For example, are they only allowed to fill out the form one time? Or are they able to view the results summary? Or if their response is auto-saved, or so that they can fill it out partially and come back to it? Or maybe can they edit their response after they've submitted it? Presentation settings manage how forms and responses are presented to the respondents. For example, you can add in a progress bar showing how close they are to completion, which is especially helpful if you have a longer form with multiple, pages of questions. I always want to know how close I am to being done with something that takes more than 5 minutes, say. So that is a great thing to be able to add in there. Or perhaps maybe you want the questions to be shuffled. Maybe the order doesn't matter. And then you can also change what your confirmation of submission message says. So a little bit more about actually viewing the responses. You can choose which way to kind of look at them and analyze your data. Sometimes it may be like actual data you're analyzing, that's all numbers and stuff of that nature, or it may just be a list of email addresses you've gathered, or a list of telephone numbers or street addresses. You can view this information inside the form itself, or you can view this information in a Google Sheets spreadsheet. I'll show you how to do both in our demonstration. Another thing I do want to mention that you can do with your responses is enable an email notification for new responses. So if this sends an email to the corresponding Google account that created the form each time a new response is filled out. So I use this for work, and it helps me a lot whenever someone fills out this form I've created to request, a practice session or a meeting with me. I get an email notification to my work email address, and that way, it says I have a new response to my form, and I'll go in and view the form directly with the link from the email I've been sent. So it kind of, makes the process really seamless. I don't have to remember to check for new responses because they all get sent to me. All right. So once you've created your form and chosen the correct settings, you are ready to send it off. To get started in this process, you just are going to click the send button in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, and this will bring up the send form menu. Before you send out your form, you're going to want to decide how you're going to send it. Google Form allows you to send your forms via email, via link, embedding the form, and allows you to post to social media sites, Facebook and Twitter specifically. Which one you choose depends on a couple of things, like who your audience is and what you're using the form for. But no matter which option you choose, there's going to be an option to collect email addresses at the top of your menu. And if you turn this on, respondents will be required to provide their email address. And this is really helpful if you want to contact people in the future, or if you want if you're creating a survey and you want things to remain anonymous, you would definitely not want to check that because you don't want it to be connected to a specific person. If you have email addresses for everyone you'd like to send the form to, email is probably going to be the easiest method. Just enter the email addresses and click the send button and they'll all receive it in their inbox. You can actually include the form itself in the email, which is, very helpful, because if you want people to respond really quickly to when they're available to meet, tomorrow morning, maybe you just want them to respond as quickly as possible right in their email. You could also share your form just with a link, and you can copy and paste this link anywhere you can copy and paste any other link. And when someone clicks that link, they'll be taken directly into your form. This is, probably going to be one of the most commonly used methods, because you don't need any contact information from anyone else to be able to send this out to them. So it's really helpful if you don't necessarily know everyone who's responding. You can send it through text or Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram DMs, whatever you'd like. And if you want to embed your form, this is for if you have a website and you want the form to be present on that website. This will give you some HTML code that you can copy and paste into your website editor. And then the form will come up on your website, which is nice because it gives your website's audience access to your form without them having to leave, which is generally something we don't want people to do, is leave the website when they're on it. And then finally, you can share your form via social media. You just click on the share button that's present on the send forms menu, and it creates a new post for you to share on your newsfeed. And then once you do that, it's pretty much time to wait for responses. It's just a matter of time before you hear back from people, and then you can look at your responses and go from there. All right, so let's hop into demo so we can see some of these things I've been talking about, more practically. If you have any questions while I'm getting set up, I'd be happy to answer them.
I do not see any questions in the Q&A at this time. Just a reminder, if anybody does have questions, put them in the box.
Sweet, thanks, Beth. All right, so as I mentioned, we are starting in Google Drive. So we're going to drive.google.com, or else we can access Google Drive through the new tab on our Chrome browser, and heading into apps here and accessing Google Drive. Otherwise, we can access apps here through the Google apps menu page right here. So many ways to access Google Drive and access Google Drive like that. Now, all we want to do to create a form is push on this new button, and we'll go down to the bottom and we can click on it directly to create a blank Google form. Now, if we want to check out what our templates look like, we can go to the Google Forms menu and select from a template. And we'll see they've organized these templates into personal for things like contact information, RSVP, t-shirt sign up. They use the t-shirt sign up one for work sometimes. And we have the work section for things like order forms, time off requests, customer feedback. And then we have the education portion for things like assessments or worksheets, so on. So a lot of times what you're using the form for is kind of already made into a template. So I'd encourage you, if you want to, you can always edit the template to suit your needs. Start with a template. If you're, a little unsure of how you want it to look, the flow you want it to have, definitely start with a template to get you going there. Let's go back up and take a look at our blank form though. First of all, I want to kind of give you an overview of all the buttons on the screen and what they do. I'm going to take away my bookmarks bar. All right, so here is the name of our form, so the file name of our form. And we can name that, whatever we'd name a file so that we're going to know what is contained within it. This file name automatically populates on the name of the form. Moving over here is where we can customize the theme. So as you can see right now, the form has a lavendery background and purple accents. If we click this button, we can do things like put a header image up here and like this book image maybe, and insert that. And then the theme changes to correspond with the header image we've put up there, which I think is very cool. We can also preview what the form looks like to respondents. So that's more or less what it's going to look like right now. Because remember, we're on the back end. This is not what it's necessarily going to look like to people who are filling out the form. This is what it looks like to us as, administrators of the form, so to speak. All right. Then we have our undo and redo buttons and our send button. We'll get into that more coming up soon. Under the More menu, we have things like making a copy of this form, deleting it, printing it, adding collaborators, and some other options. We also have access to our Google account because it is a Google app, so it's going to have access to our Google account. Moving over to the middle and top here, right now we're on our Questions tab, looking at adding questions into the form. Moving to responses, this is where we'll see any responses to the form. There's no responses right now because we've just created it, but once there are, this is where they'll be. And under our settings tab is where we're going to choose those form settings. So things like making it into a quiz or managing how responses are collected, changing how the form is presented, things of that nature. So let's pop back over to questions and I'm going to fill out this form and talk about what I'm doing as I go along. So you want to add a form description so people know why they're giving their information to you. It's always kind of nice to know why you're giving information away. And that's what's going to show up first when people open the link to your form. Now moving down to questions. So when we click on this questions box down here, it wants us to input a question. And what we input here is going to depend on what type of question we are going to ask. So right now it kind of defaults to multiple choice, but we can click on that drop-down menu and change it to a short answer or a paragraph answer. A checkbox is going to be a little bit different because you can select multiple options from the list presented to you. You can even do a file upload, which is a new thing that I wasn't aware of until I started preparing for this week. So you can do things like upload an image or a resume or, other things. And I think that is very cool. Here is where our linear scale would be. So we'll have to label what the 1 means and what the 5 means to kind of give respondents that frame of reference. And of course, your date in your time. So I'm going to go ahead and add in some questions. But this should be a multiple choice. So right now I've added 4 different options for that can serve as an answer to what was your favorite Tech Tuesday. I can also quickly add an option for other that allows people to create their own answer to my question. Now, here is that formatting, kind of question formatting area I spoke a little bit about earlier. Here's where we're going to go to add a new question just by clicking on that plus sign there, and you see another box for a distinct question has popped up for us. We can also do things like import questions from previous forms. So say I don't create my Tech Tuesday surveys in Google Forms, but if I did, I could create a new form for each session of Tech Tuesdays and just import the questions, tweak it slightly, and then have, distinct data for each different week. I can also add a title and description. And this is useful for, if you want a specific area to know that this is talking about your least favorite. You can also do things from here like add an image or a video, which is really nice, I think, for the quizzing specifically. If you wanted to add, an image and have a student or a person identify what was in the image, the significance of it, similarly with adding a video in. Now, if we happen to if we happen to want things to be in a different order, so I created this title, but it's actually below the question it kind of is talking about, I can just drag and drop this to where it should go in the natural order of the form. So I can drag and drop any sort of, in any order I want to make the flow, kind of go naturally. Down here at the bottom of each question panel is where you can do things like duplicate the question to just make an exact copy of the answer or the question and the answer. You can delete the question entirely. You can make the question required so they cannot submit the form without answering this question. And you can do a little bit more advanced things, I'd say, with the menu at the bottom of your question box. Now I'm going to add another new question and see it adds the question right under whatever box I have selected. Google is very smart, so it kind of automatically knows what sort of question I'm trying to ask. It's not 100% right often, But if I ask a when question, it's going to be more likely to put the date answer type there for me. Now I'm going to move that down to the bottom. There we go. And so far that looks good. So now we want to send this form maybe. So we're going to go up here to the send button and click on it. Here's that area where I was talking about the ability to collect emails. So everyone would have to put their email in. You know, it's up to you. It all depends on your purpose for creating the form, whether you collect emails or not. If you already have everyone's email to email the form to them, you probably don't need to, but it all depends on your preferences. You can put your emails in here if you're emailing your form out. And you can change the subject to be whatever you'd like it and the message to be whatever you'd like it to be as well. But it defaults to being the name of the form, and I invited you to fill out the form. You can include that form in the email just by toggling this check mark on here. You can also send the form with a link just by copying and pasting it wherever you'd like it to go. If you're sharing it, you know, in Facebook Messenger or in a Zoom chat, you might want to shorten the URL so it doesn't come up as that super long, you know, link there. So I'm going to shorten that and copy it, and I will paste it into the chat for you all to see how simple that is to share a form out. This is your option for embedding. Here's where you change the width and the height of the embedded form. And here are your social share buttons. And all you have to do is click on that form or click on that social share button, and it already starts you off with a post to share on your social media. You can say whatever you'd like to say about it and decide to share it to your news feed or your story, you know, just like a regular Facebook post. And they can click on this in their news feed and fill out your form. So I'm actually going to fill out this form really quickly so that we can see what a response looks like. I was not born in 1960, but that's too much information to share with everyone. All right, so my response has been recorded. I can customize what this screen here says, or I can just leave it as the default. Now, when I go back to the, you know, administrative side of the form, I'm going to see that I have one response, which is awesome. That one was not there before, so I'll click on responses, and I see more than a blank page like I saw the last time I clicked on this. So I can see that one person, somebody else responded too. Awesome. So I can see that one person, two people have said that Be Your Own Travel Agent was their favorite Tech Tuesdays. And for the least favorite parts of Tech Tuesdays, someone has said that your iPad tour was their least favorite Tech Tuesdays and that we need more puppy photos, which I agree. I know. And then we have responses for your birthday. So we can kind of see all of that information laid out there. If it was something we wanted to like actually analyze and have into a spreadsheet, this create spreadsheet button right here works so seamlessly. So we're just going to click this create spreadsheet button under the Responses tab. And we're going to go ahead and create a new spreadsheet, although we can import it into or export it into an existing spreadsheet as well. And boom, that opens up. We have the timestamp of when the form was filled out, the question at the top here, and the responses in the column below them. Pretty neat. And that's really all there is to Google Forms. It's a very simple tool to use, but you can use it for a lot of things. All right, if there's no questions on Google Forms, let's move on to talk about Google Slides.
Yep, I don't see any questions so far. That was my comment about the dog photos. Always more. I use Google Forms. I actually started my address book finally online using Google Forms because I was annoyed with my old paper one, and it was nice to just be able to send the link to my family and be like, fill this out, please.
Very nice. Especially, I would imagine if you're sending out like cards
Yep.
and you don't, people move and you never know. And yeah, very nice. All right, let's talk about Google Slides. I know Beth uses Google Slides as well, so maybe she'll pop in with some tips for us on
Sure
this
do.
one. So Google Slides allows you to create really dynamic slide presentations. It's very similar to PowerPoint, which I use, and I'm showing you all right now, but it has the added benefit of being absolutely free and totally cloud-based. These presentations can include animations, images, videos, and a whole lot more. So let's talk a little bit about actually working with Google Slides. The Google Slides interface uses the traditional menu system. So the file, edit, view, this area up at the top here, along with a shortcut toolbar that populates depending on what you have selected on your slide. Whenever you're ready to show your presentation, or when you just want to see what it's going to look like when you do present it, you can click that slideshow button or click the drop down for additional presentation options. Now, Google Slides is pretty hard to talk about when you're in PowerPoint, so I'm going to do my best here. Each Google Slides presentation is composed of a series of slides. To begin creating a slideshow, just basics of working with slides is all you really need to know, and more will kind of come up as you get into working with it. We'll go over tasks like inserting a new slide, changing the layout of a slide, rearranging existing slides, and, but in brief, when you insert a new slide, it will usually have placeholders to show you where text will be placed. Slides have different layouts for placeholders depending on the type of information you want to include. Whenever you create a new slide, you'll want to choose a slide layout that fits your content and the purpose of that slide in your presentation. Duplicate slides is a function that Google Slides has that allows you to copy and paste an entire slide in all its content very quickly. Moving slides is another thing you can do. It's a simple drag and drop function to kind of reorder things in your presentation. I have to do this a lot because sometimes my flow of the presentation is not kind of logical, and I end up having to go back in and say, this point actually leads to the point that I, for some reason, placed above it. Let me go back and reorder them slightly. And of course, deleting a slide removes the selected slide. You can also hide slides if you don't want to necessarily delete them, but you don't want to include them in your full presentation. When you first create a new presentation, Google Slides is going to prompt you to choose a theme. And themes give you a quick and easy way to change the overall design of your presentation. Each theme has a unique combination of colors, fonts, and slide layouts. Whenever you select a theme from the panel that appears, it'll be applied to your entire presentation. So everything will look super consistent and really professional. And you can always change the theme again later if you feel like, oh, these colors like clash with something I actually have to include. We'll definitely go over how to do that. So whenever you create a new slide, you can enter text in any of the placeholders you see on that slide. You're just going to click the placeholder and the insertion point or that blinking cursor will appear and you can type whatever you'd like. When you add in your text, you may want to format that text to have a different style or font or whatever the case may be. But one important thing to take note of with all of these things that you could add into your slide, text, pictures, and shapes, is you have to have them selected in Google Slides for the formatting toolbar to pop up. If you don't have it selected, you're not going to see the options to change it. And you may have to click the More button depending on how wide your monitor is or how zoomed in your settings are. Now, when you're adding pictures and shapes, I think it's very awesome that through Google Slides, you can add images directly from Google Images, which is something that you cannot do in PowerPoint. So Google Slides has a one up there for me. You can also adjust an image's transparency, brightness, and contrast. And all you have to do with that is, again, select the image you're looking to edit, and those options will pop up. Shapes is going to be quite similar to pictures, and we'll go over adding some of those in soon. Now, presentations do not have to be a series of static slides. You can add animations to objects on slides or transitions to entire slides. A transition can be as simple as fading from one slide to the next, or it can have a more flashy effect. Any object can be animated, making it move or fade in and out of a slide. And Google Slides makes it especially easy to apply these effects to some or all of your slides, adding emphasis or polish to your presentation. Google Slides has one pane to manage all of your transitions and animations, and it's called the Motions Pane, which allows you to configure everything about the movement on the current slide. Now, I will say that transitions and animations are best used in moderation because adding too many can make your presentation look a little silly or be distracting to your audience. So consider using mostly subtle transitions and animations, or, just not using them at all because you don't actually need to use them to have a good presentation. I hope that was very apparent. That's what I was doing for the last couple of slides. All right, let's pop into the Google Slides demonstration. Same starting point. We're going to start in Google Drive and go to New, and then go down to Slides. Of course, you can access the templates from, going to the submenu, but we're just going to open up a blank slide right now. Like I mentioned, you're going to start with one slide, and that slide is going to be a title slide. And over on the right here, your themes will be open, and you'll see these are all just specific designs that you can apply to your entire presentation. So let's go ahead and just add in this one. And this is a placeholder right here, where anywhere it says click to add so-and-so is a placeholder. And we can go ahead and add in whatever text we want to add in. Now, if we wanted to add a new slide, we're going to go up here to this plus sign and just click new slide. And this is, our most basic slide with a title at the top and, a body of text at the bottom. Usually I do something like this and create, an ordered list. I think I have a list over here. Now, usually to make a list, because we have the text field selected, and we can tell it's selected by this blue box surrounding our area right here, all of these text editing tools have appeared to us. And one of them is to make things a bulleted list. So, well, we have to highlight things, Lydia. Let's highlight everything and make it a bulleted list. Now we may want to add some speaker's notes down at the bottom. And these are like my secret weapon for remembering what I'm going to say and staying on track, because I can get off track quite easily. Down here, we'll add our speaker's notes just to remind us that, we want to mention our website or talk about benefits of slides. Now let's go ahead and we'll close the themes box because we don't need that. Let's go ahead and add another slide. Now, next to the new slide button, there is a drop-down menu to add a new slide with a layout. And here we can kind of see all the different options for the layouts of our slides. So let's add this one, which is called Big Number. And again, we'll click in those text boxes to start editing them. Oops. Okay. Big number, that's always a fun one to use to like emphasize things. And let's actually go ahead in and add a photo. So to do that, we have an insert image button here, which is going to be on your toolbar no matter what you're looking at, no matter what you have highlighted. This area will stay the same and allow you to insert an image, insert a text box, a shape, or a line. So let's go ahead and insert an image. We can upload an image from the computer or search the web to try and find one. I'm going to search the web because I don't have a ton of pictures on my computer. And let's find an image for presenting. And select that image there. Let's see, what can we find? So we have all of Google Images at our disposal. Why don't we go ahead and use this one? We've selected our image and we're going to go ahead and insert this into the presentation. And there we are. So from there, we can resize the image, we can move it around. And what we're actually going to do next is add an animation in. So let's go ahead to the top shortcut menu. And because we have this selected, we can choose to animate it. The Motions pane has opened up on the right-hand side of our screen, and from here we can choose what sort of animation it has. There are a whole bunch of them. And when the animation is triggered to happen. Is it triggered on a click? Is it triggered after the previous animation or slide has happened? What triggers it to happen, and how fast or slow the animation is. And we can kind of preview what that's going to look like. Like so. We also can add in transitions to our slides. Say we like that sort of motion. We can also click on a new slide and add in a transition. So a transition is how it looks when one slide switches to the next slide. We can go ahead. I'm going to add something like very obvious that you'll all be able to see. That's not more subtle like the one I would actually use if I was actually going to add transitions into a presentation. So we've added the cube slide transition, and I clicked apply to all slides. So every slide in this presentation is going to have that same transition. All right. I'm also going to go ahead and add in another animation because why not? And I'm going to add in a fly-in. And once we add that in, we can actually like drag it to change the order that these animations happen in. So if we wanted the spin to happen at the end to kind of, be the big wrap up at the end of this presentation, we can make that the case. All right. Now we have a super basic, super short presentation here. And we can go on ahead to present it. I'm going to go to the first page and click Start Slideshow. Looks just like a regular presentation. You'd never know it wasn't anything different unless I told you. This navigation down here on the lower right-hand side is one way that you can advance your slides. You can also click on the slides, or you can use the space bar or things of that nature. One thing I'm going to show you to access those super powerful speaker notes is the menu that you have when you're presenting your slideshow. So we'll access the menu and go up to Open Speaker Notes. And now we can see, I wouldn't put this in the middle of the screen while I was looking at it. Now we can see what, our cues, our little notes are for giving a good presentation. What I would normally do and what I do is take it off of the screen that the presentation slides are on and put it on the screen that's in front of me so that I can glance at it as I am speaking to you all. That's my little tip. You can also advance slides from the speaker notes window. So I'm going to move it back over here so you can see and go to next and advance the slides like that. Here's our presentation. There is so much more you can do with Google Slides. You can host a live Q&A. You can, share the file and collaborate with others to make super dynamic presentations that multiple people give together. So I'm going to stop presenting and hop back into my presentation to see if there are any questions.
Looks like there's just one question from Gail, which is, so essentially with Google Slides and the forms, there's not a huge difference between that and Microsoft. And what would you think about that?
It depends on what you're using it for.
Mhm.
For most everyday users, it's not going to be a big difference. But once you get into the minutia of it, you're going to notice some differences that might, sway you to use one over the other. But mostly no, especially with PowerPoint and Google Slides, they call things different names, but they're very comparable to one another, in my opinion. What do you think, Beth?
Slides, yeah, I think Slides is if not the same, I like it just as much as PowerPoint. I don't get too fussy with mine, so I haven't really noticed it different, and being able to share them easily is great. Where I notice a difference is in Google Docs. A lot of the key commands aren't available, and I get a little irritated with that, but in a pinch to write a quick letter, it's not a problem.
I definitely agree. Especially I run into it a lot in Google Sheets, like being used to the formulas that you use in Excel.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're different in Google Sheets, which is like, oh no.
Yes.
Yes.
And I am not an Excel wizard at all. So if I notice, it's kind of, so not my favorite. But again, if you're not doing a ton of things there, I don't see a reason why you would need to buy a full Microsoft suite. And you can go to the library and use ours on a public computer if you really need to. So
Exactly. And Google Docs and Google Sheets, the whole Google apps, they're all free, right?
Yep.
Microsoft costs money. And if you want the desktop version of these applications that Microsoft offers, it costs a lot of money. So, kind of get what you pay for, but Google is offering, I think, an amazing service for nothing, besides our data, which they all want,
Yep.
Yeah, that got weird. Okay, any other questions I can answer for you all?
I don't see any more in the chat, or in the Q&A.
Hey, awesome sauce. So you all will be receiving a follow-up email from me with a link to the recording from this week and last week's. Apologize, I haven't gotten that to you yet. It was just posted today due to the holiday, but I will get that all to you post haste. And I will thank you so much for joining me today for Technology Tuesdays and learning about some of the Google apps with me these past few weeks. Sorry. Technology Tuesdays is actually coming to an end for the year. I do plan to have a new registration link for the 2022 Tech Tuesdays that I will share with everyone before we end. But side note, if you're interested in a totally unrelated program that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with technology at all, I would suggest you come to a talk that's being presented by the Wisconsin Water Library to talk about the challenges and opportunities facing our Great Lakes. I'm going to go ahead and drop that link into the chat here. So y'all can check it out if you want to check it out. Next week, we're going to talk about wearables. So your Apple Watches, your Fitbits, and more. Perhaps some of you will be getting these as gifts soon, so you want to, do some research before you tell people what you want. If you're interested in that and other awesome programs from the library, I'd encourage you all to visit mpl.org/calendar for a list of our programs for all ages. Thank you again for joining us today and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Bye, everyone. I'll be there at the Great Lakes program too with Lydia, so you should definitely check it out. It's going to be awesome.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye, everyone.